My world, as fragile and beautiful as the fine porcelain I carefully took out of the cabinet only for the most important holidays, shattered in an instant. Amidst the clinking of crystal glasses and the happy laughter of my family, as I naively believed, a silent crash echoed, but no one but me heard it. Just a second ago, I, Marilyn Stone, a 65-year-old woman whose life had always been dedicated to caring for others, was smiling, looking at my beloved people gathered at my table in my home, where every item held a piece of my soul and my memories. Today was Thanksgiving, the most sacred, the warmest holiday on my calendar. I had been preparing for it for 2 weeks, meticulously, with so much love as I always did. I bought the best turkey, a 13-kilogram one from which I knew I could get the juiciest pieces. I marinated it according to my late mother's recipe, a recipe that required not only spices, but also patience and love. I baked an apple pie, to which, on my mother's advice, I added a little cinnamon and vanilla, so the smell would spread throughout the house and remind everyone of childhood. I made mashed potatoes, whipping them to the consistency of a cloud, exactly the way my only granddaughter Abigail likes them. She always said they were the fluffiest in the world. I stood by the door, watching them. My son Dan, a sturdy man of 40, with wrinkles in the corners of his eyes that I had once kissed when he was a child. He sat at the head of the table, as befits a host, even though this house was mine. His wife, Melinda, impeccably dressed, with perfect makeup and hair sparkling with diamonds, sat beside him, showing off her perfect smile. Abigail, my precious granddaughter, sat across from them, laughing into her phone. My heart was overflowing with love. I felt that there was nothing in the world more important than these moments, this family, this happiness that I gave them, and which, as I then naively thought, they gave me in return. I got up from my place to bring another bottle of wine. It was an exquisite Sauvignon Blanc that I had bought specifically for Melinda, knowing how much she loved it. I thought about how happy she would be, how she would thank me, how we would drink the wine and chat about little things. My heart was singing with joy. And then I heard her voice, cold as ice and sharp as a knife. "Mom, are you still using this set?" Melinda pointed to my antique porcelain, which had been passed down in our family from generation to generation. "It looks so old-fashioned." I froze. It hurt, but I thought she just didn't understand. After all, she didn't know that this set was more than just plates. It was part of my history. I remember my mother teaching me how to wash each little plate, how she told me stories connected to this porcelain. I didn't answer. I just smiled, hoping she would understand. But she didn't understand. She continued, not noticing my pain. "And honestly," Melinda went on, "this table, it's so small. We barely fit anymore. Maybe you should think about something more practical, like a house that will be easier to maintain when—" She made a meaningful pause, and Daniel, my son, my only son, nodded in agreement. I understood. They thought that my house, my life, my traditions, all of it was already too cumbersome for me. They were already planning how they would live on without me, or with a new, more practical me, locked within the 4 walls of a small apartment, and this was just the beginning. Abigail, my little angel, glanced at me, and there was no sympathy or understanding in her eyes. There was only boredom, and I felt my heart clench in pain. I wanted to die. I understood that they were just waiting. They were waiting for me to leave. They were waiting for my death so they could take my house. After dinner, when they, full and content, had left, I cleaned the house and sat in my favorite armchair. I looked at the empty table where my beloved porcelain had been just a minute ago. I felt that my soul had poured out of me like water from a broken jug. For the first time in my life, I understood that I was being taken for granted. I had done everything for them. I had sacrificed my life. I had given them all of me, and they simply took it without even thanking me. I remembered how I had bought Daniel a car with the money I had saved for a vacation. He didn't even say thank you. He just took it for granted. In the following days, I tried to talk to Daniel. "Mom, what are you making up? Melinda was just joking," he said, not meeting my gaze. "We just want you to be safe." I tried to talk to Melinda. "Marilyn, you're just too sensitive," she answered coldly. I understood that I was alone in this war. The family I had created had betrayed me. They wanted to get rid of me, and I didn't know what to do. I felt like the world around me was crumbling, and I was falling into an abyss. But I didn't know then that this was just the beginning. This pain I felt was just a warm-up. I still didn't know that an even stronger blow awaited me, one that would change my entire life. After I kicked them out of my house on Thanksgiving Day, the war I was waging with my own family stopped being a secret. It became open, cruel, and ruthless. The pain I felt was replaced by fury. The fury gave me strength. "You'll regret this, Mom," Dan shouted into the phone, his voice filled with cold malice. "You'll never see Abigail again. Never." I hung up, my heart pounding. This was the hardest blow. My Abigail, my little granddaughter who was my whole world. I knew they were using her as a weapon against me, but I couldn't give up. I had to fight. I called Mr. Grant, an old friend and the lawyer of my late husband, William. He was the only one who had always treated me with respect. I told him everything, how Dan and Melinda treated me, how they wanted to send me to a nursing home, how they used Abigail to manipulate me. He listened to me, and in his eyes I saw not sympathy, but understanding. He knew that my pain was real. "Marilyn," he said, "they want to break you. They want you to feel lonely and helpless. But I won't let them. I'll help you." From that moment on, our war began. Mr. Grant was my general. He gave me my first piece of advice. Don't answer their calls. Don't listen to their threats. Just live your life, and I will do everything to protect you. I followed his advice. I stopped answering calls from Dan and Melinda. They called me every day, wrote angry messages, but I paid no attention to them. I focused on myself. I started taking care of myself. I started going to yoga, to dance classes. I met new people, and I felt alive again. But their attacks didn't stop. They started using other methods. They began spreading rumors about me. They told my friends that I had lost my mind, that I had become crazy, and that I had given my house to strangers. I was horrified. I lost many friends. They stopped calling me, stopped inviting me to their parties. I realized I had become an outcast in my own town. One day, I went into the grocery store, and I heard two women, my old friends, whispering about me. "Poor Marilyn," one said. "She lost her house, and now she's all alone." "Yes," the other replied, "and they say she gave it to a young lover." I froze. My heart pounded in my chest. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them it was all lies, but I just turned around and left. I couldn't take it anymore. I called Mr. Grant and told him everything. He was furious. "Marilyn," he said, "we must sue them for defamation. This can't go on." We filed a lawsuit. Dan and Melinda were in shock. They didn't expect me to fight back like this. In court, they tried to deny everything. They said they were just worried about me and didn't mean any harm. But I was ready. I showed the court all their messages, all their calls, all their threats. I told the court how they had turned Abigail against me. In that moment, as I spoke, I felt that I was no longer afraid. I was strong. I was confident. And I knew I was telling the truth. I looked at Dan, at my son, and I saw not malice, but fear in his eyes. He was afraid. He was afraid that I would ruin the life he had so carefully built. On the same day as I left the courthouse, I received a letter from Abigail. "Grandma," she wrote, "I know what you're doing. I heard everything. I want you to know that I love you." My heart was filled with love and happiness. My little granddaughter believed in me. I understood that I wasn't alone. I had Abigail, and that was all I needed. But the war wasn't over yet. Melinda and Dan found out that I'd sold my house, and they decided I'd gone crazy. They went to court to have me declared incompetent so that all my money and property would go to them. They hired the best lawyers. They prepared a lot of witnesses who were supposed to confirm that I couldn't make decisions. Everything was just beginning to unravel. Something completely unpredictable was about to happen. You simply can't miss the end of this story. I walked into the courtroom, and my heart seemed to turn to ice. I was wearing my best suit, which I had bought specifically for this day. I felt that this wasn't just a court case. It was a battle for my life, my honor, and my dignity. Dan and Melinda sat across from me, their faces pale and tense. Behind them sat their lawyers, arrogant and confident in their victory. They thought I was old and stupid. They thought I had lost my mind. They thought I would be an easy target. But they didn't know that I was ready. I was ready for this battle. I was ready for this war. The judge, a gray-haired woman with piercing eyes, looked at me. "Marilyn Stone," she said, "do you understand that we are here to decide whether you can manage your own life independently?" "Yes, Your Honor," I replied, my voice firm and confident, "and I am sure that I can." The hearing began. Dan and Melinda's lawyer, a tall, arrogant man in an expensive suit, began to speak. He spoke about me as an old, sick woman who could not make rational decisions. He spoke about how I had sold my house, which was supposed to go to my son, and that I was squandering my money on unnecessary things. He even showed pictures of my new house, small but cozy, and said that it was too small for me. I listened to him, and I felt anger and pain welling up inside me. But I didn't let them take over. I knew it was all a lie. I knew they just wanted me to break. When his turn was over, Mr. Grant stood up. He was my knight in shining armor. He spoke quietly, but every word was filled with power. He told the judge about how I had helped my late husband, how I had helped him build his business, how I had supported him when he had nothing. He said that I had always been a strong, independent woman. And then he walked over to me and placed a thick folder on my lap. "Marilyn," he said, "show the judge what you have." I opened the folder and I saw all the documents that I had been collecting over the past 2 years. There were copies of all the messages that Dan and Melinda had sent me. There were copies of all their calls. There were copies of all their threats. And there was the most important thing, a copy of the agreement I had made with my husband William. The agreement stated that if I ever felt that my family was using me, I had the right to sell everything I owned and dispose of the money as I saw fit. My husband, my beloved husband, who always knew me best, had foreseen this. He knew that my family might betray me, and he wanted to protect me. I handed the folder to the judge. She began to read. She read every page, and her eyes grew wider and wider. At some point, she looked at Dan and Melinda, and in her eyes, I saw contempt. "Dan and Melinda," she said, "did you know about this agreement?" They were silent. They were in shock. They didn't know. They thought I was old and stupid, and they didn't know that I was ready for this. "I have one more witness, Your Honor," I said, and a deathly silence fell over the courtroom. "It's my only granddaughter, Abigail." Abigail, my little granddaughter, walked into the courtroom. She was wearing an elegant dress, and she looked like a real angel. She walked to the witness stand, and she looked at me, and in her eyes I saw love and compassion. "Abigail," I asked, "do you love your grandmother?" "Yes, Grandma," she replied, her voice firm and confident. "I love you more than anything in the world." "And do you know what your parents wanted to do to me?" "Yes, Grandma," she answered, and I saw tears welling up in her eyes. "They wanted you to leave. They wanted to take your house. They said they didn't need you." In that moment, I knew I had won. I didn't just win the court case. I had won against myself. I didn't let them break me. I didn't become a victim. I became strong. The judge delivered her verdict. She deprived Dan and Melinda of all rights to the inheritance, and she ordered them to pay me emotional damages. She also said that if they ever tried to harm me again, she would take every measure to ensure they would be left without any means of support. I left the courtroom, and I felt my heart fill with a slight sadness. I had won, but I had lost my family. I had lost my son, my daughter-in-law, but I hadn't lost myself. I hadn't lost my soul. A year later, I was sitting in my new, small, but cozy home. I looked out the window, and I saw snow falling. I was alone, but I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. I understood that true freedom isn't the absence of people in your life, but the absence of people who demean you. Only now did I understand. True strength is the right to be yourself. I don't regret that I gave birth to Dan. I only regret that I didn't understand sooner that kindness should never be done at the expense of yourself. I finally freed myself. I found my way, and now I can start living my own life.